the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Lightcast. Lightcast is produced in partnership with AVNation. It's about lighting design, lighting, and how to control it all. I'm your host, JP Bedell, with my lovely co-host, Megan. How are you, Megan Mazzocco?
Hey, I'm great, JP. Thanks.
I feel like we haven't chatted in a while, so we'll have stuff to catch up on.
Definitely.
We have I'm excited about today's show because we're going to be talking a little bit about sort of the big programs that change lighting across the country. Our guest today, Liesel Whitney-Schulte, is going to talk about the DLC program and talk about what Design Lights Consortium is and how it works. And then when we get to Lighting Vitals, there were some big statements made by the American Medical Association, and then there have been some reaction statements from other government and government-related bodies about street lighting. So we've got plenty of big things to talk about. So I'm excited.
Me too. I've been to a lot of shows and done a lot of traveling since the last time we talked, so I have a few new and exciting kind of lighting innovations and integrations to share.
Awesome. Excellent. So for those listening in your little earbuds on your commute, stick around for Lighting Vitals. It's going to be fun this time around. All right, enough banter. Let's get to our guest. Our guest is, let's say this name properly, it's Liesel Whitney-Schulte. She is the program manager for DLC, the Design Lights Consortium. She was the lighting product manager at Franklin Energy Services, which supported the Focus on Energy program in Wisconsin. She was lighting program manager at WECC in Milwaukee, and she was an energy advisor at Franklin Energy Services. She's been kind enough to come on the show to talk about what DLC is and how it affects the industry, and we're really happy to have her. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Thanks, Liesel. It's good to see you.
All right, let's start at the really high level here for folks that either haven't been doing a lot of DLC stuff or it hasn't come up on their specs yet. What is the origin of DLC? What is the program? How is it funded?
Sure. Well, DLC, there's a lot of confusion about what DLC and where it came from. DLC, Design Lights Consortium, is a nonprofit, actually. We were formed by NEEP NEEP is the Northeast Energy Efficiency Partnership. It's a group of energy efficiency programs in the Northeast region of the country. DLC it's a nonprofit, like I said, dedicated to accelerating widespread adoption of high-performing commercial lighting solutions. So basically, the way that NEEP got started with DLC was actually in 1998. They produced a series of quality guidance for distributors and for lighting contractors to be able to define certain sorts of spaces, the warehouses, distribution centers, and offices, as well as I think there was one on education as well. So this was 1998, and these were very widely used by both electrical contractors, distributors, and some specifiers actually enjoyed using these as well to help back up what they were saying to their customers about how products should be used in facilities. So this was really, this was called the Know-How series, and these were based more on using best practices in using fluorescent, and at that time, 1998, HID. So in 2006, when high-performance T8s started entering the market, NEEP really tried to develop some more guidance around what are best practices for using high-performance T8s. Really got great adoption in the Northeast, and it slowly worked its way across the country. We were aware of it in Wisconsin as well, but it was really in the Northeast where they had the biggest impact. And then in 2008, we all started to see LED fixtures starting to make it into the market. So it became every program that I knew of, I knew other program managers from around the country, were all trying to develop lists of qualified products that we could use in our programs. There was a lot of uncertainty about LED at the time. There was a lot of confusion about what people should be looking for, how to evaluate these products. And so each program was kind of doing that on their own, program by program, and coming up with different lists. So in 2008, the NEEP members, who again are the utility programs, asked NEEP to develop a list for them so they could pool their funding rather than everybody trying to staff and evaluate all these products and try to maintain separate lists, to pool their funding to be able to have NEEP pull that together for these Northeast programs. We got wind of it in the Midwest and thought that sounded like a great idea, and a number of folks in California as well wanted to jump on board. And it was it basically in 2010 is when the DLC launched the qualified product list. So it took a little bit of time to get going. It is utility funded, so that's something that the funding is coming right from the utilities to. That's why the direction of the programs comes really from the utilities. It's directed to help save energy efficient, or to promote energy efficiency, to find the most highest performing products that are going to save the most energy, and that they can feel confident in that they have performance data for those products. So 2010 is really when the list hit the market and started and just kind of took off from there. So more programs got on board, more manufacturers wanted to get their products listed on those lists so that could be used across the country. I think you asked how it was funded also.
Yeah, I think people have some curiosity about how that works.
Sure. Yeah, it is confusing because it's a nonprofit entity. We all of the funding that we receive, we do receive funding from our member utilities. They each pay as a sponsor. They sponsor the program and are participating with that with their time as well. But they provide funding to the program that kind of the annual membership fees offset the cost of administering the program. And then there's also application fees that the manufacturers pay for having their product listed. And basically what the application fees cover are the review for all those test reports and the evaluation of those products to make sure that they're meeting the requirements of the qualified product list, as well as that so they're reviewing all the test reports from the labs there, the administrative cost of adding them to the project. So those fees are actually listed on the website for anybody who's interested. You can look at exactly what the complete list of application fees would be.
Sure. So let me ask on this idea of high performance and high performing. There are lots of different categories that are covered under DLC, and we can talk a little bit about how you guys define categories if we want to get in the weeds on it. But I think the overarching question, I think, if you're a specifier, is what are some of the key things that DLC is looking for when it's looking at a product that's going to go on the QLP? I know different categories are going to have different criteria, but sort of broad strokes, what
Sure.
are we looking at?
Yeah, that's a great question. The things that we looked at initially was under guidance of Energy Star and Department of Energy. They both offered some guidance as far as what folks should be looking for in these products. And so we're looking for reporting, testing, measuring, and reporting the CRI, CCT of the product so that you know where those are falling. Not that we have baselines, we have a floor for those, and that varies by category, like you said. There's also some specific floor as far as a lumen output for certain types. So, for example, the exterior categories, there's 3 outdoor categories, and they're sort of in bins of lumen output. So there's a low, medium, and high lumen output. So there's a floor for each of those. There's also some spectral distribution requirements that they've got. So, well, not spectral distribution, sorry, it's of course, now I'm going to blank. The lumen density requirements. So if you have certain products, we can predict, troughers, we know that we want to avoid light in certain zones. We want that particular product to have a certain minimum percentage within a given zone. So those are defined by each individual, what we call primary use type. So sure. Those primary use designations. So that's all, again, it's a big chart. Is our technical requirements table that outlines some of those and the differences between categories. So the things that we're reporting on are, color quality, light output, efficacy, that's a big one for our programs and a big one for our utilities, is to have the most efficacious sources possible. We recognize that that's not the only thing that you should be looking at, but for the purposes of this list and the ability to test a product at the luminaire level and use luminaire level test data as opposed to application data, that's kind of where one efficacy becomes a big item for our list.
Sure. So I think I don't think you guys see yourselves as a competing program to Energy Star. It's more like a sister program or a complementary program. Is that right?
We've tried to structure it that way. We don't want to compete with Energy Star. A lot of the guidance we share, similar guidance and similar requirements for minimum CRI, certain CCT ranges that can be included. For example, there's they just recently Energy Star started accepting lower CCTs under the new ANSI standards. So those, we're looking at doing the same thing to try to expand our offering. So we want to align with Energy Star as much as possible, but Energy Star has been developed as more of a residential sort of specification, and a lot of the categories that we cover are more commercial oriented. So we were actually on the phone with Energy Star this morning just to kind of coordinate and to say, are you guys covering this? Is this something that you're looking into? How are we? And we want to align those specs as much as possible. Energy Star is a publicly funded organization, but we do try to align with them as much as possible to fill in. We're really looking to fill in those gaps that they didn't cover for commercial products.
Got it. Makes sense. It makes total sense.
I have a question. It's kind of a high-level general question for somebody who's kind of more of an outsider. But I realized that you said the QLP has been since 2010. Is that
right? That's when it started. Yep.
And then you were talking about the funding is covering the administrative costs for the testing and the evaluation and adding them to the QLP. I noticed there's like 182,000 products on there. Is that correct?
That is correct. There's a couple of different. It looks like a lot of It looks like a lot of products. A lot of those are family grouped products. Mm-hmm. So we've tried to make it easier for manufacturers to both test and report on groups of products as opposed to having to pay for an individual test report. And if they can scale the data on certain products and they can explain how that family works as a family and where the rated data fits in, and then we're not testing, they are getting testing done on the worst case scenario.
Okay.
So it's a little confusing the way that works. It's meant to prove out, if you had the worst possible configuration as far as efficacy goes or as far as light output goes, that would be one of the products that gets tested. And then they may have a number of those worst cases, and then they can provide rated data for everything in between. So it makes it more affordable and easier for them to get groups of products listed. So yeah, it's a huge number right now, 180,000, 190,000. And a lot of those there's lamps, there's a lot of family grouped products, but yep, it's a lot.
Is it possible for a product to lose its DLC listing?
That was my next question, Jason.
There you go.
I was going to say, how often? Because the SSL industry is moving at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and so how often does a family of products have to be tested or retested, or do some of them fall off, like JP was asking?
Sure. Well, there's a couple different things that we do. So we do update our technical requirements every so often. So we try not to do it too frequently because it is pretty disruptive for manufacturers. Once they have their product listed, if they haven't made dramatic changes to the product, they're going to want to keep that listing in place and be able to sell products, off of the list. Manufacturers have the ability to update their listings if they have made a major change. There's a difference. So when we change our requirements, again, we try not to do it too frequently. We just did a change that will be going into effect in April of 2017. So we're in version right now. We're under version 3.0, actually 3.1 of the technical requirements, and so that change took place in 2015. We started those changes in 2014, but that was not an efficacy change. That was a restructuring. So sometimes we do things to make changes to the specifications to restructure how the products are listed or recategorize things to make it easier for people to use. This change that we're going to, the version 4.0 that will be going into effect next year, was an efficacy change. So it's across the board. All categories will be increasing in efficacy by about an average of about 30%. And that's, again, in response to changes in the industry. So the levels that they were at, that they're currently at right now, as of, well, that we'll be accepting through the end of August, are those levels were set in 2013 and went into effect in 2014. So by the time that this actually takes effect, it's been almost 4 years. So imagine the changes that we've seen in industry in that past 4 years in efficacy. So it does go up. But to answer your question, as far as what happens to those products then that can't meet the new spec or the new requirements, those would get delisted. We do maintain those delisted products though. So for example, a number of our programs, like our members, like to be able to grandfather products in for a certain amount of time. They don't want to have to change their whole program when there's a change in the spec, and maybe there's not enough products listed, or maybe they just have projects that were in place or were purchased prior to the change. So they want to give a chance to do that. So the products don't go away. The delisted products are still available. All of them are all delisted products are still available. To date, through all of the different version changes, we've delisted about 40,000 products. So if you'd add that to the 180 that are currently on the list, it's like 220 some. But they don't go away. They're in there. Their historic values are in there. Their performance information is still published. So if a program wants to use it, and some do, some of our member programs still use delisted products and will allow those into their programs as well.
Okay, all right. Does that relate to the nature of the tiered system for DLC listing, or is that separate and apart from how products get tiered?
The tiered was actually, that was a new feature that we added in that 3.0 was a, like I said, it wasn't an efficacy revision, it was a restructuring. So we kind of reconstructed our table so that it turned into having a number of outdoor, like 3 outdoor categories and 3 indoor categories, and then there's subsets of those categories. So 3.0 was just restructuring all those, and that was one of the things that our members had asked for, was a tiered system to be able to offer. For example, California this year, and actually I think as of the 15th, their troffer program will only allow the premium tier troffers. So I think that's PG&E and a number of the California utilities. So they were looking for a way to differentiate the upper half or the upper tier of those. So the premium tier is about the top 5 to 10% of products, or in terms of efficacy. So they're a little bit higher performing, and they also have a requirement for an ISTMT test, in situ measurement test for the driver. So that's a piece that went into effect with that. So the 3.0 was restructuring the technical requirements table to include that tiered structure. So the standard products are still, for the most part, they're better performing than a lot of the products in the market. The premium tier are the top echelon of those products.
Got it. And so I don't have a good sense. I mean, I'm here in New York, and so I'm familiar with some of the local utilities around here. Rebate programs are always in flux, but I know DLC listing is generally the requirement for commercial fixtures, and then Energy Star for residential programs. I don't know about programs in this area that are utilizing the 2 tiers, but that doesn't mean they don't exist. It just means I don't know about them right here in New York. To your knowledge, are they structuring rebate programs differently based on, like, if I choose a premium DLC product versus a standard DLC product? Is there a higher rebate level? Is there incentive for the end user?
There are a number of programs that are looking at using the tiered system that way. That's what the intention was, that be able to have a higher efficacy, to be able to claim higher savings. So there are a number of programs. There's not a tremendous number of them yet, because even though this went into effect last year, or really as of March, and they could qualify up to any time from the time it was released. The list isn't populated tremendously. There's a pretty good amount of troffers that are in there in that group, and I think there's a good number of high bays actually. but not all programs have it. Utility programs are very, very slow to move. Sometimes it takes a long time to get through the regulatory process. Having been in that world, people would be surprised to know how long it takes to write a paper, get your savings in line, and then prove it to the evaluators of that program to say, yeah, this is actually the savings that we're going to see, and then get it approved and through. So I think we're still going to see a lot more programs coming through that way, and I think the closest one in the Northeast, I believe there's a premium offer in Vermont and possibly Massachusetts.
Okay.
That sounds about right for those states. They're always on top of things.
Right.
Just to chime in, I know the May issue of Architectural Products did have an on-spec specifically about incentive programs and best practices in LED specification that was written by Acuity Brands and in tandem with BOMA, so the building owners. So that kind of gave some tips and pointers about all these different incentive programs.
Yeah. It can be tough to figure your way through incentive programs. They're all different. Every single one of our members runs their programs slightly differently, and they're all up against different regulatory hurdles. So we do have on our website, we're just updating it now in time for our stakeholder meeting, there is a program summary where you can access all of the different utilities that are our members and what they have incentives for. And we try to update that at least once a year, but it's tricky.
No, I'm sure. Can you talk a little bit about the move or the addition of controls into the DLC program? That's something that I'm certainly curious about, because I think that's a huge energy savings possibility that also frees up lighting design, because it moves the decision making away from what's actually making light to how it's controlled, and I think that frees up lighting designers and architects. So talk a little bit about how that works.
Sure, absolutely. So the network lighting controls specification and qualified product list, the specs were just published in April, right around Light Fair, and we have 2 products qualified on that qualified product list so far. And network lighting controls, they have the way that we've structured that program is it's more around the capabilities of the system, and making sure that they're reporting what it's capable of, what sort of strategies is it capable of implementing. Not necessarily are they using it in every single case, but what can they do with it. And really there's a lot of emphasis on the ease of reconfiguration once it's installed, and some savings associated with not having to run wire everywhere. So it's starting to become populated. We have I don't know how many applications he has in process right now. We have a number of manufacturers, but we're seeing this, and this is something that our members came to us and said, these controls are everywhere. We're losing the opportunity to collect savings on certain measures as efficiency codes are getting to be, or energy codes are getting to be more and more stringent. That really restricts the amount of savings that they can claim. So these controls offer them the ability to really refine how the products are functioning in the space. You know, high-end trim is a big piece of that's not necessarily being captured by programs. So having this list and having that documented capability is going to be really helpful for our members. So they've been asking for it for a long time. So that's a new one. You could do a whole show just on that.
I'm sure. Yeah. Well, controls are something that we've gone back and forth on the show a few times. And in different ways. It's probably the most, what we've said here before is that, you know, controls now are kind of where LEDs were about 8 or 10 years ago, where no one really knows which protocol is going to win, which one's going to sort of become the widespread, you know, or technology. But once it does, we're going to see rapid adoption of controls programs across the country, which is a good thing. I'm all about that. I think it's the smartest way to bring down your energy loads, especially in commercial buildings.
Yep.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say one of the things that's been interesting with the controls programs is, like you said, the ability to really hone in on the savings, really get into the savings attributed to how those are operating in the space, and that's been a big piece for what our members were looking for, and the standardization is really missing. And it's difficult for specifiers to select a system in a part of an area and not, if it's not attached to one of the things that they really have been looking to promote, or our members have been looking to promote, is the integrated controls. And systems that will work with integrated controls, and the interoperability between different systems and different luminaires and control systems. So there's a lot that needs to be worked out yet. Our hope is that this qualified product list will provide more information about what each system does, so that specifiers can evaluate them side by side and really be able to tell how to use those.
Have you had any, or is there any future collaboration with the folks at LEED or LEED, and LEED certification? I'm thinking maybe a point or some sort of some structure within the LEED program for using DLC products, or is that two sort of separate things?
I haven't heard of anything along those lines. I think the efficiency programs, some of them are more in tune with LEED in their given area, depending on what their energy code is, and
right.
what if they have a new construction program, they're usually most applicable in new construction, but and being able to get additional points for being able to show the energy savings, or attribute it that way. So not directly to DLC products. It's an interesting idea. I don't know that we've had any of those conversations.
Yeah, I was just curious. I mean, the power density, or the LP lighting power, the LPDs on LEED are pretty straightforward as far as the requirements, but I think they don't speak very much to specific product choices. Mm-hmm. At least it's not as far as I'm aware. So it'd be interesting to sort of add another layer or another potential bonus in that program. I was curious about it.
There are a number of programs that offer a design-based incentive. So, for example, in Massachusetts, MassSave has a number of programs that work with designers, so that they're actually able to specify whatever products they want to. They're not necessarily restricted to DLC. A lot of times they will select products from DLC, but they're not restricted to that. And then they're working within being able to show those lighting power density reductions, and they're paying an incentive based on the square footage of the space, as opposed to and for the having a designer on the project, as opposed to just your straight dollar per fixture incentive. So
sure.
Those are a little more progressive.
Yeah.
Sorry, Megan, we lost a little bit on that.
That's a great way to promote having a dedicated lighting designer on a project, and it just makes sense.
Yeah, and I totally agree. All right. Well, my last piece here was what's coming up? What's coming up in 2017, 2018? What are sort of the things on the roadmap that we should be aware of as we're thinking about the program?
Well, you asked about the controls. Controls, the specification that one of the things that we've been getting much more involved with industry. We have an industry advisory council or committee that meets with us to kind of help offer guidance from industry in a more formalized manner, to be able to say, one of the things that they brought up with this specification was concerns with how frequently they are offered, and being able to plan their business cycles around when these changes might take place. So, for example, the network lighting controls will be it's going to be revised each year. So annually, that specification will be revised, and partly that's because, like you mentioned, the standards just aren't there yet. The standardization in those systems isn't there. There's probably something that we didn't think of this year that's going to be really important next year. So that's going to be revised annually. And one of the things that we've done with the luminaire side, or the LED fixture and lamp side, is to try to look at longer term. How can we schedule these revisions out and give industry more notice? So this one will go into effect in 2017. That's a pretty big change. That advocacy jump is a pretty big change for a lot of manufacturers to adjust to. But they typically will adjust, and then we want to give them some time before we make another change. So we're looking at, possibly starting the process of making and going through that discussion in early 2018, with the hopes to having a new spec in place maybe by 2019. The dates aren't set yet, but we are dedicated to providing more notice and working with industry to try to make sure that those time frames work with them and their ability to meet those. We're revising our website to make it easier to search. To provide more value both to our members and to folks that are trying to find products. Right now, it can be You can find lots of products, but people have their tricks and tips that they use to try and get through the website. We want to make it more intuitive, make it easier to find products and to find information about DLC, and to be able to get involved with the process of creating categories and working through these revisions and the updates.
That said, and just to, I'm looking at the website right now, there's a massive amount of data on here about products, and for if you're a specifier out there, especially on an energy-driven project, the search engine is not bad to use. I think it can always be improved, but you can do it by keyword, do it by manufacturer. You can, on the slider bar, sort of set up how much light output you're looking for, what kind of efficacies you're looking for. There are ways to refine your search, so we could always do better, but it is a really, really strong tool. I use this pretty often in my day-to-day work just to narrow down possibilities for specifiers when they're working on, especially on retrofit and energy-intensive projects. Mm-hmm. So it should be bookmarked if you're doing this kind of work.
Great.
All right. Well, Megan, do you have anything else, or should we move on to our news you can use segment?
I think we're ready for lighting vitals, but I will definitely, whenever the revisions to the website are made, I have a section in the magazine called Resources, and we love to broadcast tools and improved research methods for finding materials, finishes, and lighting products. So that'll definitely be in there, be part of it. So
great.
Keep me in the loop.
We will.
Thanks.
All right. So now is the part of the show we call Lighting Vitals. Liesel, are you going to hang around with us and talk lighting news?
Sure.
All right. So this is where we talk about one or two items that caught our eye since our last recording that we want to share with the audience and sort of spitball how it might turn out in the future. Megan, what do you got?
Oh my gosh, how much time do I have? So, like I said, I've been to a few places since the last time we talked, looking at all kinds of new and exciting things. I just wanted to let everyone know that we have a Legication and Light Fair product roundup in the June issue of Architectural Products, if you haven't gotten to check that out yet. And one of the standout ideas from Light Fair is this Acuity brand's Rubik, and the idea is dynamic lighting, and that is also linked into health and well-being and alertness and productivity, but yeah, what it is it just kind of, it's tiles of light, and they can be programmed, different colors or different patterns, or to be dynamic at different times of day, kind of like the sky and the clouds. So anyhow, that was an attention getter. And along those same lines of dynamic lighting, at NeoCon, there was an amazing new product by Philips called Philips Lume Patterns, or for Philips Luminous Patterns. And what they're doing is they're integrating, this is why it was at NeoCon, is because they're integrating decorative patterns of light into architectural panel systems and architectural features. So the light is infused and embedded into surfaces around us, and that really creates a huge decorative opportunity and ambiance, and kind of with an upscale feel. Right now they have a few patterns that they've developed called Sparkling Dots, Radiant Lights, and 2D and 3D cutouts. And what they began to develop, of course this is more geared towards hotel and hospitality applications, is what could they do to imitate a candle light, the flame of a candle, and that kind of flicker effect. And they've managed to do that, integrated into a panel, into a luminous panel. So that's some dynamic lighting that's really, really interesting coming on board. Then also, I was going to mention that the Architectural SSL Product Innovations Award issue is out. as of June. So if you haven't looked at the Product Innovation Award lighting winners, they are all here. So that's exciting. And then another kind of product trend that came out of NeoCon, and you can also see it at the lighting shows, and for instance, some of the winners in the PIAs is color. There's a lot of color coming. And here's another giant red light. So yeah, and color was really big at NeoCon. On top of that, there's more integration with ceilings so that you can get a really clean look, which architects love and desire. I know that Armstrong is really, really great in working with designers to come up with custom solutions. Like, for instance, they have an integrated product right now with USA Lighting that is beautiful, and that is in the ceilings product focus in the May issue of Architectural Products magazine. I think I have one more kind of big, oh yeah, the integration of magnets in lighting placement and flexible lighting placement. It's pretty cool, where there's just like a magnetic track, and you can kind of, plug and play with, a slotted magnetic track, which is interesting. This shows a linear fixture right here, but they also have track fixtures that you can use in the ceiling in those applications.
Those kind of applications for retail are just stellar. Like that's got retail written all over it. Product layouts change. It's super fast to get new lighting on it. It makes total sense to me.
Yeah, and then the last bit of cool lighting news and experiences that I have is this hat is my cue, is my notes. I got to see the mock-up of the new Gulfstream 600 that's not going to be released until, I think, 2018 or 19. It has tons of LED lighting inside the cabin that is tunable, dimmable, and I actually suggested to them that they integrate the lighting program with this jet lag rooster app that I use to travel with, and it tells you when you should be exposed to light and when you should stay in the dark so that your body can adjust the circadian rhythms when you are traveling across time zones. And of course, Gulfstreams fly slightly slower than the speed of sound, so they are specifically designed for transcontinental flights. So I was really excited to see the integration of LEDs and controllable LEDs into the cabins.
You get to do the cool stuff. You get to travel, you get to go to shows, you put the products in magazines. The rest of us are just, slogging away day to day,
Well, I'm so lucky that I do get to, see all this exciting stuff and tell everyone about it. It's the best. Field trip.
My lighting vitals this time around is not as fun and adventurous. I wasn't on a Gulfstream. I didn't go to like 17 different trade shows. I didn't publish a magazine. But I did come across something from the American Medical Association that is going to have an impact on the industry. So we'll post a link to this on the show page, but the AMA put out a statement dated June 14th. It was a press release that basically said that they have concerns about LEDs in street lighting applications. Specifically, it was color temperature that was their biggest bugaboo. They are recommending, and they are sort of in line with the dark sky folks on this, 3,000 Kelvin or warmer as a guideline policy for LED street lighting, especially in residential areas. The AMA doesn't really have a stake or a way to change codes or any kind of mechanism like that, but they are the sort of, they're the medical wing of, they're our biggest medical body in the country, and what they say, I think, matters in the public debate. And so I would expect municipalities to look at this news and rethink their LED specs. Cities, counties, states across the country are thinking about LED retrofits. I know the interstate system is thinking about an LED retrofit, but they cite some important things. One being potential disruption of circadian rhythms and nighttime glare in residential areas. They also cite certain issues with wildlife, including birds, insects, and turtles and fish, who are detrimentally affected by blue spectrum LED in evening lighting. So it's an important thing to think about, and I think it's going to change how specs are written. I can tell you that several manufacturers are already responding to this, both on the glare front and on the color temperature front. So we're seeing manufacturers sort of trying to get out ahead of this because, when LED rolled out, it wasn't an unmitigated success in this application. They've got, depending on the spec, depending on the area, some residents loved it, some residents didn't. So this is an ongoing debate. It's interesting to see the AMA jumping into it, and I'm curious to see where it goes from here.
Well, California will be on top of it because they have their own set of product specifications. The health department does. So I could see California coming up with something related to this, and then maybe the Surgeon General.
Well, so the problem or the issue, I think, at first was that you could only really hit and Liesel, I think you know as much about this as anybody. You could really only hit those kinds of efficacies for street lighting and area lighting when you were in the cooler color temperature ranges for a long time. That seems to be changing now that the chipsets are getting more efficient.
Yeah, I think we're seeing a big change that way. And you mentioned the California programs. I know there's a number of rather large-scale installations going in California that are in the 3,000 Kelvin range. And that's been something that, with this version 4.0, one of the things that we tried to do was to create, we created a provision to create allowances that might help offset some of those efficacy challenges that you have with the lower color temperatures. So it's not all fleshed out yet. It's something that we're talking about at our stakeholder meeting in a couple of weeks, and that we want to work with industry on to find out, is an accommodation in efficacy needed for lower color temperature products? And if so, what's the appropriate accommodation? What would that allowance be? And really framing up, what color temperatures are, where are we looking at? Is it different for 3,000? Is it different for 2,700? And, there's certain products that it's more important, like you mentioned, residential type of street lighting. That could be much more critical than highways. For your general residents, that might become, it's going to be an interesting thing to see what sort of interest we have and how our listing might change in those type of products. So we're trying to find a vehicle to help accommodate that from our side as well. But yeah, we're just talking to a designer who is very much an advocate of warmer color temperature at night, especially for residential area use. So I think we're going to see a lot of, like you said, we're seeing manufacturers starting to look at offering more, and up to this point they maybe weren't necessarily as motivated, but I think that motivation is going to come now.
Yeah, I think that's right, and I would love to be a fly on the wall because certain manufacturers are proclaiming that they can be just as efficient in warmer color temperatures as others, and others are saying that it's not possible, and so the push and the pull in that room between manufacturers and what they're asking for from you guys must be really interesting. I'm not asking you to divulge any of it. I'm just I would love to be in the room for how that all shakes out.
It's going to be a series of discussions for sure.
As someone who has been asked to look at new streetlights quite often. I've been asking these questions for years, like, how is this going to affect the people if it's installed in a neighborhood? Or what about, little micro communities of the ecology that's in the area? Like, how is this going to play out in terms of human health, place, and well-being, not only for humans, but for other species who inhabit the area as well. So I'm kind of excited to see it resolved.
Yeah, and the thing is that the industry is incredibly resilient. Like, if you tell them this is what you need to do, they just change the product. I mean, like, you'd be amazed how many manufacturers do a turtle-friendly fixture, right? Like, they want to sell lighting in Florida. There's a special law in Florida about turtles, so they make a turtle-friendly fixture. Like, they will figure it out. If there's enough of an opportunity of market-wise, they'll do it. They'll do what they have to do to get in the market. So don't count them out on that front. They'll get in there.
Yeah.
All right. That's all the news I have. Liesel, anything from you? Anything else you want to share with us? But thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. This was very interesting. We'd love to talk more about our controls program as that gets rolling and start sifting through some of that information. We're all kind of learning together right now, and it's a really exciting world of controls.
Oh, we'd love to have you back, especially for a dedicated controls conversation. I think that'd be fantastic.
Great.
All right. Thank you, Megan. A pleasure as always.
Thanks, JP. It's been a pleasure, and I'm actually going to a national park next month where there are turtles. So I'm going to take note of the lighting in the area.
Yeah. See how close the lights are to the water. See and they should be amber. And if they're LED, it's amber LEDs, not a lens. You can't do that. That's a no-no.
Okay.
So,
yeah. All right.
So crack open the fixture and see what color the LED is. All right. The Lightcast is produced in partnership with AVNation. Your hosts are Megan Mazzocco. You can find her at Megatorial on Twitter. I'm JP Bedell. You can find me at James Bedell on Twitter. Talk to us about the show. Ask questions. Tell us what you want to talk about. We're there. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's been fun. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.